Good morning. This morning I want to talk a little bit about knives, and I have just a couple of the knives that I carry myself, and the reason why I carry them. I favor fixed blades over, it's all right. I favor fixed blades over folding blades, and there's actually kind of an interesting story behind that. I was doing a force-on-force training, and for those of you who don't know what force-on-force is, basically it is a training exercise where you use dummy guns or airsoft guns, you know, non-lethal guns, and or knives or any kind of training tools, and then you actually get they have someone that you basically role play, and someone is the aggressor and they attack you and you have to defend yourself against them. So I was doing force on force with a rather large man, and of course every time you run the scenario the response can be different. The guy could just walk up and ask for change. He could just walk by you, not even do anything or say anything, or he could attack you. And in this particular instance, you know, I'd been attacked probably 7-8 times by now, so I was, you know, my adrenaline was pretty high up there. Well, in this particular instance, he didn't attack me like he normally did. I mean, usually he'd just grab me, try and wrestle me to the ground. But in this particular instance, he went directly for my gun, which was interesting because it was a concealed carry force on force. I was supposed to be completely concealed. So the fact that he went directly for my gun kind of surprised me. And I made my first mistake was I tried to draw my gun. And he grabbed my gun. We ended up on the floor. We were wrestling over it. And after about 5 minutes of wrestling, I managed to actually eject the magazine because my thought process at the time was, if I can empty the firearm, then he couldn't use it against me if he actually got it off of me. So I actually was able to eject the magazine, but when I tried to pull the trigger, he put his thumb between the hammer and the firing pin. I was carrying a 1911 replica, and of course that prohibited it from firing, and he was able to wrestle the firearm away from me. He was sitting on top of my chest, pointed the gun directly at my chest, pulled the trigger, and I started shaking, went about as white as a sheet, because if this had been a real life scenario, I would be dead. So afterwards, we got talking about what I could have done differently, and I said, well, you know, he asked me, is there anything that you could have done to come out on top on that situation? And I said, well, you know, for one, I shouldn't have drawn. And he was like, true, you shouldn't have. And for two, if I had a knife, and he looked me in the face and said, well, why didn't you have a knife? And I got to thinking about that, and I thought, why didn't I have a knife? And I started kind of looking around for knives and what I would like to carry. Like I said, I'm, you know, there are these people who are so super into knives. They know the kind of steel, and they know the kind of, you know, whatever. I've taken a little bit of knife training, but I'm not down to, oh yes, this steel is better than this steel, and, you know, whatever. So I decided, and then after a couple years later, actually, maybe not years, maybe it's a couple months later, I don't remember exact timeline, I actually was in another situation, a live situation, where gun retention was in question. I ended up coming out on top with that one, but I didn't have a knife still. I mean, I just had a folder, a small little utility folder that I kept in my pocket. But so I started seriously looking for a defensive knife, and I ended up bringing home this one. This is a K-Bar TDI, and let's see if we can bring it here a little bit closer. K-Bar TDR, and in all of the knife, I say all of the knife trainings I've been in, like one, For defensive purposes, a straight edge is usually recommended because serrated edges can skip along clothing or get caught up in clothing. So I have been recommended the straight edges are better than serrated, or at least if you're going to have, if you have to have a serrated, do half serrated, half straight edge. Now, most often I carry my defensive knives on my offhand side because if I have a firearm or I need to retain my firearm, I can carry on the offhand side. Now, the reason I really like this little knife is because it's very, when you're talking about carrying with a knife or using a knife with your offhand, you know, obviously your dominant hand you have a little bit more fine motor control over, whereas this is a little bit more, your offhand is usually a little bit more of a gross kind of motions. And so this seems to be very easy. It's just, you know, if you make a fist, this fits just right in an easy fist kind of a grip. And it's called the TDI because that stands for the Defensive Institute, I think, or is it Tactical Defensive Institute? I think it's just Defensive Institute. And it's a place in Ohio, I believe, where they teach knife training, etc. So I got this one because it seemed just very intuitive for slashing, stabbing, or just using a punching motion. You can do a pretty good stab with that one. And it's a relatively short blade length. This blade length I think is only 3 inches, 3.5 inches. I need to get out my, oh, look there. Haha, okay. 2.5 inches. So that's a relatively short blade, but a nice little blade and a really good grip on that. And it comes with, if you get it, it comes with a sheath, a belt sheath that you can thread your belt through. But I wasn't too crazy about that. My husband got this for me for Christmas, actually. It is, it has attachments, it comes with it. I'll have to ask him what the name of it is. It comes with either a belt or a clip. This one's the clip one. Uh-oh, baby's waking up. Next I have here, this is the Cold Steel Mini Tanto. And I really like this because it does well for your defensive type knife use, you know, along the forearm, and it can be an easy stabbing knife. And they have, Tanto tips have very strong tips. Yeah. My kid woke up. And it has a very nice rubbery grip. And a pretty nice, I think these are called, I mean, I'd call it a hilt, but I'm probably calling it the wrong name, or the hand guard here. It's nice and big, so you won't have to worry about your hand slipping past there. So there is the Mini Tanto, and I'm trying to remember how long the blade length of this is. 4 inches. 4 inches. So that's a pretty decent. The only thing I do not like about this one, same like with the TDI, is I've never been a fan of the sheath. So if any of you knife people out there know a place where I can get a nice sheath for the Mini Tanto, please let me know. The only folder that I have carried and that I have really liked is the Ty-Lite, the Cold Steel Ty-Lite. And the reason I like this one is, I'll show you here, it is very easy to deploy. One-handed. I like one-handed methods of deployment are better. And so what I will sometimes do, not always, is I will carry the TDI weak side, and I'll put this in my front right side pocket. Not all the time, but just because this is such an easy deployment folder. I know a lot of people recommend folders for defensive purposes, and that's fine. I obviously have one folder here, but I just never, especially with my left hand, have gotten good at these button deployment methods. You can see here the button that to deploy it, and how this actually works is this part here gets caught on the edge of the clothing and deploys the blade. So that's why I like the Ty-Lite. But as you can see, these are all straight edge knives, and that I have liked. Like I said, if anyone knows of a place to get a shape for the Mini Tanto, let me know.